Hi, I'm going to teach you maybe not the best penmanship in the world, but how to properly make cursive letters, and also with a little bit of explanation of why they look the way they do, because it seems to me that that there might be some disconnect between the way that a cursive letter looks and its print counterpart. You know, some people, in fact, I grew up, especially G, you know, why does that, or some version of that, look like that? You know? But anyway, I'll explain that in just a minute. So let's just start with A. So again, you start at the top, go down around, and then down. With almost all the letters, you start at the top. Same with the little a, start at the top, go down. B is you make a little tail, and go down, and bring it back up, make the first hump and the second hump, and then you're ready to start the next letter, like that. The idea behind all cursive is that you lift the pen as little as possible. So this is all connected. So little tail, go down, trace that same line again, and make the first and second humps, and then you're ready to start again. You don't have to make that little curly Q. In fact, that looks a bit confusing if you do it too big. So maybe just tracing back over itself is better. Little b, you can connect that, just to show you how it connects. You make the swoop, then you come around, then another little loop to get you ready for the next letter. Capital C, so all the capitals kind of are the ones that are disconnected. So capital C, you know, it doesn't have a, these capital ones don't have a start, in other words, they don't have a little thing that connects them, but the little ones do. So the C, you can make a little curly Q thing at the top, and then just make a C. And if you were connecting that to a little c, you would just start at the bottom, make the first part, trace back on itself, and then around, just like a normal C that you'd make. And then you're ready to make your next letter. D is similar to B. Make a little tail, go down, back up, and you're ready for your next one. Or without that little flourish on the bottom. With or without is fine. And of course, all these are adaptable to your own style. You can make the letters skinny or fat like this, and as long as it has that motion, it's going to still look like a D. E, you start with a little flourish at the top, and then you just make, you know, and that's pretty obvious that it looks like the E, so it's got the three parts there. So you can kind of see how most of these look like their print counterpart. So again, E, and connecting that to a little e, and it's pretty easy to see how that looks more or less like a print E. So the cursive E could be like, you know, a little bit of a stylized print E. All right, F is when it starts to get a little bit, there's a little bit of disconnect. I've got to get in the right mind frame. I almost forgot. So, well, let me do it first. Let's see. Kind of have to do it without thinking. So this is one version, and then another version is like this. So you can cross it or not cross it. Another version is to put a curly Q at the top. You know, something like that. There are actually quite a few. If you look through history, there are a number of ways that people do all these letters, but some version of that. And the most basic one is just this, just up, down, and around. T, and I'll skip ahead to that one just so you can see, T is really similar, some version of that, but then the F is just crossed. So you can see how this looks kind of like a T. You know, use your imagination. So it's got the top part and then the bottom part, and then you are bringing it around to start the next letter. With the F, you're basically just crossing that T. So, and you can make it look more like a print if you're more careful about where you put these things. So it looks like a print F that way, but then Cursive has kind of simplified it to that. All right, G is the hard one. Why does that, or that, two different versions of the same thing, look like a G? Well, it kind of doesn't. But let me modify it a little bit. If we make this flourish at the beginning, come around like this, then can you see how it starts to look like a G? But not like a big G as much as a small G. See? So it kind of evolved and got a little bit more flourishy, if you want to say that. And actually, even big G, big print G used to, be a little bit fancier. It was like that. So kind of a fancified version of the small G. So that's where the connect is. So it went from this to this to this, and then finally just to that. So can you see in there that there's that G, the little G? And so again, in your own style, you could make it look more like a G if you wanted to, but sort of the adopted standard has become this. It's kind of a hard one because it doesn't really look like a G. But anyway, that's the explanation behind it. And then of course, if you want to connect that to a little G, you just start from that tail and you go around the top like you're making a C, come to the other side, go down, and then you're ready to start the next letter. Okay, H starts with the little tail, go down, go across. Hold on. I've got to do it without thinking first. Okay, there are a couple different ways to do this. This is the way that I've always done it, is actually to lift the pen. So you make the first one, and then you come around and cross it, and you're ready for the next letters. So like that, hello, or you start a little bit lower, and you can be on the line. So Cursive is neat because it's very stylized. It can be adapted to your handwriting, to your style. It can create your own fonts just by making, kind of changing your, where you place things and how you do it. But if you wanted to actually not lift your pen, you could do it that way. But this is actually more proper. So the idea of lifting the pen doesn't, or of not lifting the pen doesn't always work. So as with all capital letters, it's a little bit different, whereas the small letters always connect to each other, except for X and when you cross the X and you cross the T and dot the I. Those are the only real common disconnects. Okay, moving on. So again, H, and then we'll connect it to a little H. Go up, down, and then a hump, just like making a regular print H. Okay, I, you start with a little tail going that way, and then you just make the I. So, basically you're just making a line and not worrying about this type of thing as you do in a print. So if we connect the capital I with a little I, I can see how that connects with each other. J, actually, it kind of goes the other way, so it's a little bit harder. So you start in the middle, go up, around, and then connect that way. So if we were to write the word juice, so it connects to the U. Same. So again, you start, let me put it on the line this time. The word juice. So capital J connected to lowercase j. Like that. So as you can see, on both of them, the bottom part goes the same direction. So on this one, you're just making that big part at the top, and you go down and make that tail. And on the little j, you make that tail without the big part, and of course you dot it. K starts with the tail, goes down, pick up your writing utensil, go around, come back down. And then you're ready to start the next letter, like as in the word kite. So again, K, the tail, go down, pick up your pen, go around like that. And if we connect that to little k, you make the top part. Like that. It's pretty. I like K. I think it's a beautiful letter. Okay, L is fun. I think that's another really beautiful letter, and you can see how the L is in there. So there's the top part and there's the side part. So if you take a print L and just make these cool little curly things on the ends, then you have what's basically a cursive L. But this is how you draw it. If we were to connect that to a lowercase l, you just go up. It's just a line. So the same as that equals that. So this is just indicating a line, as in a lowercase l. All right, M starts this way. Instead of going up with those beginning tails on the other letters, we start this way and make like a candy cane.
Where do you want this?
And then just make an M. So that's pretty obvious, right? So like a M, it's just rounded with that beginning thing. So again, M, and connect that to a little m. And M can be confusing because you know, M, as we know, has 2 humps, but this little cursive one has 3. But it's because this one has to start, so it's coming from the other letter and then making that line, so the same line there. So it's a nice straight line and a nice sharp point here, and then you make your soft humps, the rounded ones. So you don't want it to go like this, because then, you know, it could get confusing. What if you accidentally did this? M's and N's, especially when they're connected, can be really confusing. Just remember that the first part is pointy, and the parts that actually make the humps are the rounded ones. All right, so we did M. N is the same way, except with just 1 hump. And then the same thing with little n. So I connect that, make the pointy part. Oops, that should be connected. And the 1 hump. So M and N are really similar. Just make sure that the M, you know, corresponds to the way you think of a normal print M with the 2 humps, and the N just has the 1 hump. And of course they have the line too to begin them. O, always start at the top, and you just make an O. You need to go counterclockwise. So you start at the top, go left, go down, and around. Oops. And then you just make that pretty little thing at the top. O can't really connect to some of the letters. So if we were writing the word on, there's not an easy way to connect it, so you just start a new letter down there, because this always ends at the top. Of course, if you were writing the word O, then it can connect. So big O, little o, and O connects to the other letters. P, and you'll notice this is the same as a lot of the other letters. You start with that little tail, go down, trace back upon itself, and then just finish it up. And you don't want to connect it, because then it'll look like an R, and we'll do that in a minute. See, if we were to keep on going, then it would look like an R. So P just kind of stops there. And then little p, when it's, you know, when it's connected to other letters, it starts with that connection point and goes up and then down, traces back on itself and around clockwise, and then gets ready for the next letter. I'll turn the page here. Q is another one of those kind of weird ones. So it kind of looks like a big cursive 2. You might be asking, well, why does that make a Q? Well, it's similar to G, where it sort of just had this progression from this, and you can kind of see that some things were similar, like this part is similar to that, and this part is similar to that. And so if you were to really be more obvious about it, I guess you could, like, you know, make this big O and then go down, but then it just progressed to this. So you're kind of making the side of a circle there, and then you just make the tail of the Q. So it really does just look like a big cursive too, and it doesn't matter how you do it. You can do it tall or skinny or fat, and as long as it has that rounded edge and then the tail, then it's going to look like a Q. And so we'll make a big Q and connect it to a little Q. So it's similar to P, and that you go up first, and then you go around counterclockwise like an O, and go down, and then you don't go this way like a G, but you go backwards. So you go the other way. So whereas this is a G, this is a Q. So the only difference being that the G you circle around this way, and the Q you circle around that way.
I don't actually want
Did we do a little G previous? Anyway, that's how you do a little G. So back to Q. So Q, now next is R. So you start with the tail, as in a lot of the other letters. Go down, trace back, go back up, make it like it's a P, and then down like that. So it's just like a P, except you make this little curve, and you go down to make it look like an R. So like that. So it's similar to that. It's pretty obvious to see that one. And then connecting the big R to a little r, you go up, and you make a high hump and a low hump, and then you move on to the next letter. It's a little bit confusing
this on blue. No,
how that looks like
there's no.
this, but if you were to think of it in terms of maybe looking like that instead of like that, then you can kind of see how the R is in there. It's a little bit of an old-fashioned kind of fancy way of writing an R, but then you just connect it to the other ones. And it's kind of important to have this one higher than that one, and to make these close to each other so that it doesn't get confused with the next letters, like if we were to write run or something. Okay, so R. And S can be another confusing one. So you start at the bottom, and you can either start like this, or just, without that little flourish, or you can just go up and do it like that. And I think S is fun to write because you can, if you were to be really creative, you could do some fun stuff there. I don't know, or however you connect it. It's just fun to make it extra fancy. But if you look carefully, you can see a regular S in this. So right here is the S. You see that? And the only difference being that you start it with a line, basically, and then you make the S. But it actually kind of looks a little bit off if you do it too perfectly. So it shouldn't just be a line with a regular S. It needs to be a little bit of a curved part, and then a very fluid motion to go like that. Then you connect it to the other words. There's the word sun. So capital S, just start with a nice fluid curve, pretty straight, and then make your S. The top one is always smaller than the bottom one. And then we can connect that to a little s, which is the same motion, just not so much of the, not so many open areas. So just like this. Big S, that motion, same motion down there for little s. T starts at the top, and then goes down. So remember, this was F, and that's T. Sometimes it can go like that. So F is up higher, T is this way. There are other ways to make Fs, but I won't go into that now. F is kind of a one that you can get away with doing different things on it. So there's a big T. Oops, that's an L. It needs to be pointy there, or just end it. So end it there, or be pointy at that side, and then you can start in your next letters. And I'm not I'm not having the best handwriting necessarily. I'm not
No, not in that.
putting it on the straight lines or anything, but these are the motions. So T, and you saw me do the,
Oh,
so there's big T
not in the
and the little t.
R.
And of course you have to pick it up to cross it.
R.
U is pretty easy. It starts like an M,
Do that.
so this kind of curve. You make the U, you go down to make its
I'm not gonna do what you're saying.
tail, just like a capital U, a print U. And if we were to connect that, it's the similar thing. Just you have to connect it by going up first. Then you make the U and the tail, just like this, but with a connection point. V is similar, except it's pointed. And I can't really connect that to the small letters down here. But V, little v, has to, when it's connected from another word, we'll do it over here. So V is like a U, but more like a V, more like a print V. So it could be either pointy, the word view,
Out of the way, okay?
or more like this, but it needs to be not like that one. So whereas this one, the U, both of these sides are roughly parallel to each other. The V has to be more like that. W can either be rounded, so kind of like an upside down M in cursive, or it can be written like this. We the people.
No, that's updated. That's
And this is a fun one too because you can get kind of
what are the little S's?
fancy that way too.
No, there's
If you look at the Constitution, they've got great handwriting there. You can see their personalities come out.
little S.
So W is another one that doesn't really connect to some of these smaller letters.
There.
So W, and then little w, it has the connection point, and then it's just, I've never really seen a cursive W do that, although it could,
Now
but it's,
a U.
you got your connection point and you just do soft rounded letters,
A U is a
say we there, like that.
A U is a
So does the W always connect from the top, like you don't bring it down, and same with the V? Because otherwise the V will look like a U if you go back down.
Well, let's see here. Can we think of a letter or a word that, let's see, if we're writing the word who, then it would be at the top. Let's see. What about the word win? So, yeah, it does always come off the top. Well, I don't know. I guess there would be cases where, yeah, it doesn't go down unless there's, yeah, WX. I mean,
now W.
yeah, it always comes off the top. I can't think of an instance where it would go down because it doesn't really work. You can't really do that.
Because if you went straight down, it would look like a U and an I.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that doesn't work. So it does have to come off the top, go straight across,
Now X.
because that just isn't proper. It can't go back down and start the I like normal. You have to just pretend that part doesn't exist when you go to the next letter.
And with a V, if you went straight down, it would just look like two I's.
With our X's.
Yeah,
Or a U. So you
Yeah.
have to go
Yeah, you have
straight
to-
over,
that's a good point. I'm glad you pointed that out.
like that. That's the problem I have.
It's funny. You can be writing these things, and if you learn it properly, that's the most important part because you can write it without even having to think about it. But here we are trying to show you how to do it, and it's harder to do it because I'm thinking about it, which is, again, illustrates why it's so
The
important
only
to learn
reason
it
I
the
thought
right
of
way.
it is because just yesterday I wrote a word and it didn't look like a W, it looked like a U.
Oh,
It looked like I didn't know how to spell.
that's a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up. X starts like a W or an M, and then you just exit. So just like that, just a little bit more curvy and fancy. Little X. You know, you could, let's see. Let's write the word xylophone. So with a little, starting the word like that. So you'd start a little X like that, so similar to a big X. And you write the whole word. I won't write the whole thing. But then you come back and cross it. So usually in cursive, you write the entire word, and then you come back and cross your X's and your T's and dot your I's and J's. And you don't worry about them usually until after the word is done. So xylophone, then you come back and cross the X.
What about when X is connected, like in box?
Let's see here. So if we were to write box, so it just comes across, and the tail might come up like that, depending on what letter it is, or it might start at the top. But either way, it kind of connects at that top point. So X, Y starts like that. You make that part of the Y, and then a tail. Little y is the same thing. Same motion, just not as big. Let me write it more properly on a line here. So there's big Y, little y. So it's pretty easy to see how that corresponds to a print Y. So it's kind of like this. Again, Y, and little y. Z, a little bit looks like a 3. But if you think about it, you can see in there that there's the Z. It's like a Z, like a print Z with a little tail and a connection point. And then usually start with a nice little...
For a capital Z?
For a capital Z. This nice little flourish at the top. And then the little Z is the same way, just smaller. So if this were the center line. And that one would go out to the top. So you're basically kind of writing this curlicue, fluid motion Z, and then giving it a tail, and then connecting to the next one. Same thing there. But it does kind of look like a 3, the same as a Q looks like a 2. But once you understand how the, why it looks like a Q and why that looks like a Z, then it's a little bit easier to remember. Anyway, this is a long video, but I hope that's helpful. Let me know if you liked this. If you didn't like it, don't let me know. I know it's not perfect, but hopefully this is helpful. All right. See ya.